In the 1998 movie, Pokémon, the first movie, Mewtwo famously says this.
I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
So, let's talk about that.
And all I've got to offer is sensitivity, intelligence, and charm.
Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Pokemon, obviously. Specifically, we're going to dig into that famous quote from the first Pokemon movie that I read in the cold open. Are the circumstances of one's birth truly irrelevant? We're going to look at this both in the world of Pokemon and how the situations in Pokemon would more likely play out in reality. Now, before I start, I want to make something clear. I'm by no means saying that people from low-income or marginalized places cannot accomplish great things. Please do not take that from this video. What I am saying is that denying the fact that the circumstances of one's birth can really act as a hindrance towards someone's chances of success in a capitalist society is naive and idealistic. Climbing the economic ladder in the real world has always been difficult, at least in the capitalist world, but it's only gotten harder in the last 30 years or so. Some factors that contribute to that are things like tax laws that really favor the wealthy, as well as environmental factors like poorly funded schools in primarily low-income neighborhoods. According to the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, climbing the economic ladder is something that takes generations. How many generations depends on where you were born. Now, the reality in Pokemon is more varied. You definitely have more of a chance of climbing that economic ladder. Sort of. So, let's look at some characters in the Pokemon universe that were born into precarious circumstances, and if those circumstances are irrelevant in the world of Pokemon as well as if they would be irrelevant in our real world. All very exciting stuff, I'm sure. Also, I know this topic, it can be very touchy for people, so if I say something that's inappropriate or offensive, please let me know so I can do better in the future. So, with that out of the way, here are the examples that we will be talking about. Team Skull, Brock, Marnie and Piers and all of the residents of Spikemuth, Jessie and James. Let's start with Team Skull. Cool. For those unfamiliar, Team Skull is basically the Team Rocket of Pokemon Sun and Moon. They're basically a roaming gang of homeless teenagers led by a man named Guzma. Their headquarters are a dilapidated, abandoned mansion. The gang is composed of misfits, all of whom have failed the Island Challenge. The Island Challenge is the way that the Alola region determines Pokemon masters and such. They have a wealthy benefactor in Lucamine, who is a rich, powerful scientist lady and the main antagonist of Sun and Moon. Team Skull carries out Lucamine's bidding in exchange for money and the means to survive. I think she might actually provide them with that dilapidated, abandoned mansion. I'm not sure though. Team Skull actually has a lot in common with the Beagle Boys, who I talked about in my last video. So if you're interested in more about that and Becker's economic theory of crime, I'll put a link maybe up here, maybe down there. You'll see. If a thing pops up here around this point, click it. If it doesn't, it's gonna be down there. So, are the circumstances of Team Skull's birth irrelevant? It's really kind of hard to say with them because we don't really know the circumstances of their birth. We only know that they've ended up in this situation. But that current financial situation is definitely relevant. Most of these teens probably would not have taken on a life of crime if their financial stability were not contingent on it, not including Gladion. Gladion's an outlier, Emo's son. So Team Skull, pretty straightforward. Let's move on to Brock. When we first meet Brock in the original Pokemon anime, he is the sole provider for himself and his 9 younger siblings. This is because he is the son of an absent father. He's also become the gym leader at Pewter City, taking over as not only caregiver, but also financial provider for his siblings in the stay of his absent father. The way the anime presents this situation is that it taught Brock this sense of responsibility that really helps him excel, which is all well and good, but let's look at the reality of that. In reality, the average family income of a child with an absent parent is on average 45% lower than that of a child who is not given the extra responsibility thrust upon them by that absent, neglectful parent. In reality, children who are given the responsibility of parent from a young age tend to be economically hurt in the long run, not taught some vague notion of responsibility and perseverance. It should also be mentioned that it's only after Brock's father returns that he's able to go adventuring with Ash and the gang and reach his full potential. So, are the circumstances of Brock's birth irrelevant? In the world of Pokemon, In the end, his father does return and he's able to actually chase his dreams. If it is relevant, it's almost presented as a positive thing, the responsibility thing. In the real world, however, studies have shown that it would probably be entirely relevant. It's hard to climb the economic ladder and chase those dreams or whatever when you have to spend your time caring for 9 younger siblings. Now, let's get into the characters that actually kind of sparked the idea for this video. Let's talk about Piers and Marnie in the town of Spikemuth. Spikemuth? Spikemuth. I'm just not realizing that I'm not sure I know how to say that. Spikemuth is a low-income town in Pokemon Sun and Moon, and home of Dark-type gym leader Piers and his younger sister Marnie. The Spikemuth gym is notable for not having Gigantamaxing. Jeez, Ellen, before you film, you should probably know how to say stuff. Their gym does not have Gigantamaxing. A special ability available in every other gym in the Galar region. It's made pretty clear that people tend to think less of the town and the gym because of this. Piers himself is very self-deprecating about it. When you finally make your way to his gym, he has this to say.
See, I'm really not a great gym leader. Figured that's why nobody was coming to challenge me. This is a simple gym stadium. We can't even Dynamax our Pokemon, but well, I still hope you enjoy the battle.
Piers and Marnie end the game with more pride in their home gym than they started it with. But are they practically in a better position? Well, they seem to have garnered more respect, but financially, nothing seems to have changed. They still don't have the Dynamaxing leg up of neighboring gyms. You could say they lack privilege. You could say by the end of the game, they've become comfortable with their place in society and their lack of privilege. Class privilege is a demonstrable fact in the real world. I'll put some links to some sources below. And it seems to also exist in the Pokemon world, in the case of Spikemuth and Piers and Marnie. So, are the circumstances of Piers and Marnie's birth irrelevant? I would say no. They still lack the class privilege of neighboring towns. Now for the biggest one. It's a classic, guys. Let's talk about Jessie and James. This is a big one. We're gonna split it up. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about Jessie first, then we're going to talk about James, and then we're going to talk about their relationship with each other and what that means. Alright, let's start with Jessie. Jessie is the daughter of a high-ranking Team Rocket agent who abandoned Jessie when she was only 5 years old to the foster care system so she could go off chasing the legendary Pokemon Mew. She left her with very little money, and it's actually canon that the young Jessie was sometimes forced to eat snow. When she grew up, she tried to make an honest living as a Pokemon nurse, but could not afford to go to the school for humans, and had to go to the Pokemon nurse school for Chanseys, like the Pokemon. She ended up failing out of the Chansey nursing school because she's not a Chansey and does not have the abilities of a Chansey. After this, she attended the Pokemon trainer school, Pokemon Tech, where she met James. Speaking of, let's talk about James. James's upbringing was almost the exact opposite of Jessie's. He was the only child of millionaires and actually left that lifestyle of his own volition because he didn't want to marry the girl he was supposed to marry. I'm sure there's nothing behind that. No coding or anything. As I mentioned before, Jessie and James met at Pokemon Tech, where they both received the lowest scores in the school's history. The pair then joined a biker gang, separated, both joined Team Rocket on their own, were grouped together with Meowth, and the rest is history. So these are very obviously two very different circumstances of one's birth. Jessie was dealt a bad hand, and James was born into a life of privilege and wealth. But they both ended up in the same place. So, in the canon of Pokemon, yeah, the circumstances of their birth was irrelevant, unless you interpret James' story as an LGBTQ youth running away from a heteronormative society that's trying to force a hetero relationship upon him. But that's a whole nother video. But let's look at how these things may have played out in the real world. Jessie was not able to afford a formal, a higher education. Here's how that could have affected her in a real capitalist society. Those without a bachelor's degree earn on average about $30K a year. Those with a bachelor's degree earn on average about $50K. Students from high-income families are 8 times more likely to get a bachelor's degree than those from low-income families. Given that information, it's very likely that Jessie and James, if he hadn't run away, would not have ended up in the same place. The circumstances of their birth would have been entirely relevant. Alright, let's wrap this up. So, was Mewtwo right? Are the circumstances of one's birth irrelevant? In the fiction of Pokemon, these circumstances are definitely less relevant than they are in the real world, but still relevant. This is apparent especially through Team Skull and the trainers at Spikemuth. Like I said at the beginning, I'm by no means saying that people from low income or marginalized families are not capable of great things. Quite the opposite, actually. What I'm saying is the capitalist world does not provide them with the opportunities they deserve. Unfortunately, Mewtwo is wrong. In our current society, the circumstances of one's birth are all too relevant. That was the Pokemon video. Like I said at the top, I know that I talked about some sensitive stuff here, and if I said something inconsiderate, please let me know so I can do better next time. In my next video, I'll be talking about sports anime and the hero's journey, kind of moving away from some of the political stuff for the next one. It'll be fun though, it'll be fun. If you want to help me support this, I have a Patreon, as well as some merch that you can buy. Both of those things are in the link tree below. Yeah. If you enjoyed this video, you know, like it, comment, share it, subscribe. If you didn't like this video, I'm sorry, but I think you might be one of Mewtwo's clones from the movie. Bye! I love the man who always honks when I'm trying to do this. How does he know? How does he know?